Conclusion. It has been in this case study of Winterson, the king of Capri, that there are a number of reasons why the author has marked in the word order. All these reasons will seem to point to one principal aim, that of creating successful communication between the writer and the reader listener. This irregular, quick state that many variations of grammatical structure relate to the speaker's or writer's need to present message in a form readily adapted to the addresses recognized as an interpreter. A writer may use marked word order to emphasize a context. For example, Winterson makes use of marked word order to bring attention to the contrast between the rich and the poor that lies in the earth of the king. The rich she gave advice, and to the poor she gave money. A writer can use marked word order to highlight parts in the text which issue regards as informatively important. The scene clear, for example, when the subject is placed in the end sentence position, becoming the rem in the sentence instead of the usual tm, therefore receiving and focus. Winterson is made for the use of this aspect of markedness in two directions. One is marking an element which is informatively important with the sentence, and one is marking the sentence because it is important point in the plot as a whole within the reader context. Within the sentence, Winterson used marked word order or VS quite frequently in sentences with direct speech in order to focus greater attention on the speaker, as in "Good morning, wash, say the wind." Winterson again gives an focus to subject element when he uses marked AVS order. Until the party of Nikuri was a big pan of chicken soup. She also used marked word order to focus attention on negative element in the sentence by placing such an element in the initial sentence position and at the same time making an focus fall on the other most important part of the message, as in never in the case of Capri there being such a win. Within the wider scope of the task, she used marked word order to provide strong cohesion between sentences, has already been shown in the diagram on page 67, and at the same time allowing an focus to all of the time important information in the sentence. There was a bed with someone sleeping on it. On top of the bed was a coat. On top of the coat was a vacuum cleaner. On top of the vacuum cleaner was a bicycle. On top of the bicycle was a box of apples. On top of the apples was a duck. On top of the duck was a pair of knickers. On top of the pair of knickers was a big pan of chicken soup. Chicken soup. It was seen above all that Winterson used to make a word order in order to orientate their young reader listener. For example, she helps her audience process information regarding the physical position of the events by furnishing such an element that would normally be placed in a sentence position. This way, not only does she immediately present the place which the plot is moved, but through inversing subject and verb elements, she also able to give the person entity involved the greater attention for and focuses in. Across the bay was the city of Naples. When it seduces out information regarding time and space with initial and end sentence position, rather than accumulated the information in a single position in the sentence. Winterson's positioning of marked sentences in the text as a whole shows how she used the linguistic device to highlight the most important parts of the story. The first marking appears when the plot moves in a different spatial dimension. Initially, the story concentrated on the king and his palace in Capri, when, for the first time, the dimension Naples is introduced. We find Winterson using two sentences with marked word order. Has already been seen, the first sentence is a low level of markedness, the second a high level. Very often, the king will lean on his balcony and admire the view over the Bay of Naples. Across the bay was the city of Naples, where a lot of poor people lived. Having introduced the protagonists into the story, the king, Mrs. Geo Wash, the setting of the story is complete, the event, a great tempest. The most plot is now introduced. Once again, Winterson uses a certain level of markedness in the word order ACVC to signal this important stage in the story. Where the plot begins, on Capri, where the king was snoring loudly in his crown and his socks. The first thing that the wind did was to blow the picket caps on the palace guard. Also to be noted in the passage that follows the above sentence, the fact that the winter sun repeats and same word order as a VC, and indeed many of the word TNCL with exclusion of the initial space adverbial A, which however serves as the setting the scene for all the following sentences. And the second thing that the wind was to blow the birds out of the trees. And the third thing was the wind was to blow the lectures of the beach. And the fourth thing that the wind was to blow the ends of the church clock. And the ninth that the wind was to blow all the king's clothes off his balcony. Such a lesson involves a certain amount of repetition, which is in itself a marked form of language use. Marking the verbal space where the event takes place, immediately orientation the reader listener can then concentrate on exactly what's happening. The repetition of the sentence pattern with the sole supposition of certain keywords also allows the young audience to concentrate on the substituted words with the comfort structure which by now has become familiar. So repetition of the sentence pattern which becomes a big time listening is counting stories and is found once again in the king when the epoch produced by the witness described there was a bed with someone sleeping in it. On top of the bed was a cow, on top of the cow was. This marks sentence pattern ABS repeated 6 times. When the son managed to create and set a suspense for the use of the marked word order, the child has to wait right until the end of the sentence to see what things now in the pile. We can imagine a person is reading the story slow, stopping afterwards and asking the children to guess what the next object is. Tension is thus brought from marked order to very natural the ever caused by the wind. Winterson first draws attention to the cause, tempest, and then effect. The important event and the real promoter of the story, the one that caused the king and Miss Jill to change roles. It cannot pass unassuming when Winterson use of marked word order makes sure this does not happen. Anytime communication is a way to make sure this of stable and marked forms and more marketing for form. A writer gives dynamism to a part of text. He wants to underline the important but demarcating from what is usually unexpected. Alternative aesthetic and dynamism state in a normal condition of natural language using successful communication requires a balance between normal static language and unusual dynamic language use. In this regard, Adam Mason has stated, to be viable, communication constantly finds its most suitable location on a scale between complete defiance of expectation and complete fulfillment of expectations. This is in line with the only important characteristics of communicative behavior, namely that too much stability is and under too much dynamism in the language uses have a way of striking a balance. It has been shown in this case study that the dynamism marked with order can be adopted to underline the most relevant points in the story, thus guiding the young audience to the correct comprehension of the tale. Word order also being shown to be a precious tool that this author uses to orientate a young audience and assist the mental processing necessary for successful communication to take place. Such use word order as the alternation between a marked forms is also valuable in gaining a routine children's attention. The King of Capri, the important role word orders in making the story exciting, interesting, and communicative, successful as being illustrated. It's hoped that in the following Apne's initial case study, further research in this field will be able to establish if any common strategies and patterns exist. The use of marking and market word order in the genre of children's literatures.